go to get gas for their generators, but nobody knew which streets were open. And it wasn't just me, it was people all over the county. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to work on that as an issue on how to improve communication and get some radio stations in each part of the county to be willing to work with Public Works to keep us advised on an hourly basis about what roads are good and what roads aren't good, and what's, and to be liaison with PG&E because nobody could get a hold of PG&E. And it was just real frustrating, and I was wondering if you might be willing to take that on as an issue.
Definitely. Thank you for the question. You know, our emergency services in the county, the people on the front lines, I feel do an excellent job. The sheriffs, the public works, but communication and leadership from the board is where I think we have some opportunities, and in the administrative offices to make sure that the people know what's going on. One of the things that I have found as I've looked at emergency services in the county is you go to the county website and you can find out certain things that you need, but there's no push of the information out to the community. And I definitely feel that that is needed, whether you're talking about radio stations or doing things in advance so that we can tell people what kind of services are available to them when the need arises. We lost power in Silverton, I think, for 3 days, if I do recall. I mean, so it wasn't just out in the country, it was in the towns as well. And I definitely know it's a serious issue. Not just when you look at emergency services, when you look at some areas, other areas of what we have to deal with at the county level, it's not so much that I feel that the folks at the county level need to do a better job, as much as I feel the leadership needs to do a better job of communicating and giving a direction to the folks on the front line. Thank you. So, now questions go. Yes?
Are you, what should I say, amenable to the concept of changing building codes so that as we progress forward, we don't make the same mistakes that we've made before, and try to make each unit, let's say housing or a business, self-sufficient in terms of energy, or at least partially self-sufficient, if not completely. In other words, I see the national picture as, if we had this, we would be encouraging whole new industries, mainly solar, but there could be wind involved, other things, so that we would have homes that are relatively independent. So when you did have a blackout, it wouldn't matter too much. You know, at least 20 years from now, people would be able to say that because we would have a large number of these kinds of buildings available. So are you willing to push in that direction for the future? I don't want to go beyond urban growth boundaries, but within.
That's a very good question. And you know, I haven't said anything about my extended family where I come from, so it's kind of interesting that you asked me that question. I don't know if I should own this or not, but my father was a building inspector, and my mom was a plans examiner, both in building departments. I know I wasn't an inspector myself, but I believe it was the UCD code, the Universal Building Code. You know, that's really what the building inspectors are responsible for, is making sure that the code that has been established is rolled out. On the other hand, I definitely support green energy and the need for us to look at developing more green energy. And I could definitely see an ordinance situation, which we could include as part of what the building department does. We can't really change building code, because that's something that happens at a state or federal level. But I think as a county, there is much, much more we can do. For example, I know that PG&E is more than willing to work with communities to look at alternative ways to conserve energy, as well as to look at alternate forms of energy. And we could do more as far as partnering with them to take advantage of that. And I will say that in some other counties across the state, they really have partnered with them to make some of those things happen, more than we have taken advantage of here in Marion County. Yes?
One of the issues that comes up frequently at the county level is transportation. Do we need a second bridge over the river, and do we need to change the interchange in this very town? Yeah.
So, being that we're in Woodburn, I've thought a lot about the Woodburn interchange. That when I talked about things being approved without infrastructure being put in place, that falls into a classic example of that. I understand Woodburn's desire to have the outlet stores, and I would support that, and I think it's good for Woodburn, it's good for jobs, but we should have figured out the infrastructure ahead of time. I definitely feel the interchange in Woodburn needs to be improved, although I can tell you right now it's going to cost a whole lot more. It's going to take a lot of work as far as looking for grants from the federal government or maybe from the state. I know that Marion County can't handle that burden on its own. I don't want to give anybody the impression that I'm going to make a campaign promise to change the Woodburn interchange, but I definitely will say that I would definitely feel we need to push to try to make that happen, but we're going to need assistance from the federal and state in order to make that happen. Does that answer your question?
Second bridge.
Oh, the second bridge. You know, I've read a lot of those things because I work in South Salem, and a lot of my employees actually live on the other side of the river. And every winter when the ice comes, I have to deal with all the folks that have traffic issues and whatnot. Plus, I know that when you're trying to cross the bridge at 5 o'clock, can be quite busy. I have to admit, I have not looked at the traffic flow. One of the things that I will do as a county commissioner is I will look specifically at what is going to happen with the traffic flow. There's positives and negatives on both aspects, whether or not you need to build a bridge downtown, or whether you need to put a bridge closer to Kaiser, or in between Salem and Kaiser off the Parkway. I would have to look at all of those factors. Once again, it's also going to be a matter of money. Do we have the money to pay for that? And Marion County can't do it alone. I think it's actually a federal highway, if I do recall, or depending on where we put it, it's going to be federal. Otherwise, it might be state. So I think we definitely need to look at another bridge, because I know the experiences that people are experiencing, whether it be rush hour or whether it be during inclement weather periods. Once again, we've got to find the funding for it. Does that answer your question?
And of course, there are traffic concerns wherever you put a second bridge too.
Yes.
Upsetting the community that's there.
Exactly, and that's definitely something you got to look at, because you got to look at. So when I meant traffic concerns, I meant both the traffic that would be going over the bridge right now, which is very congested at rush hour, but also what is the impact going to be on the communities where you might move that to. I definitely don't support throwing highways up through residential areas. Definitely opposed to that. Yes, Wayne?
The battle's over, Measure 37 and Measure 49. I think really shine the spotlight on the water issues in Oregon. That the state really hasn't fully addressed the growth and development in relationship to water resources. Where do you see your role as county commissioner in working to improve that situation in the future?
I think I need to be more involved than our current county commissioners have been, as far as looking at what are the ramifications when we put in a large development that could be draining water from either a city that doesn't have the resources to support it, or from an agricultural community that needs the water. I mention that because one of the things we dealt with in Silverton is we had to annex a bunch of country estate type places into Silverton, because they were taking all the water away from the farmers' water table so that they weren't able to continue to irrigate their farms. So that all got brought into the city.